Finally, let me answer the question about recognition of Kurdish genocide. I would like to point out that the Iraqi courts have concluded that the monstrous Untold campaign against the Kurdish people in the city of Halabja constituted genocide. My government has the same opinion of the events in Halabja as those expressed here. I would also like to add that the word genocide is a legal concept. In cases where there has been no judicial examination, it would be difficult for the Norwegian government to recognize an assault as genocide. However, in cases where a court of justice during independent legal proceedings in accordance with the international law has concluded that an act of genocide has taken place, the government will concur with this conclusion, as in this case here. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my dear colleagues, this was a translated extract from the Norwegian Foreign Minister's speech in Norwegian Parliament's chamber on 25th October 2012. As you can see, he proclaimed that the Norwegian government, and I quote, has the same opinion of the event in Halabja as those expressed here, unquote. And what is expressed here, I quote again, the Iraqi courts have concluded that the monstrous Untold campaign against the Kurdish people in the city of Halabja constituted genocide, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great victory for all of us, all friends of Kurdish people, and those who have been working for recognition of Untold campaign and what happened in Halabja as genocide. The Norwegian government has made up its mind. The foreign minister has spoken, of course, on the behalf of the government and made this statement in the Parliament's chamber. What we have to do now are two things. Firstly, understand how this happened. Secondly, ask how we can use this to make the ball roll further in Europe. It all started with the efforts of Kurds living in Norway. This is an extremely active community, a great many people with an enormous desire to participate and contribute. They have joined local political parties. They have understood how democracy works. They constitute a vote bank that political parties would very much like to tap into. Well, then politicians and political parties have to deliver. And this is why Kurdish issues are relatively often on the Norwegian political parties' agendas. As a part of this process, I had the pleasure and honor of heading a delegation to Kurdistan in June 2012. I visited and conducted discussions with such prominent politicians in the KRG as President and Vice President of the Parliament, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister in charge of Foreign Affairs, and the Minister for Martyrs and Untold. I also visited Halabja and the monument. I met the survivors in Halabja. After my visit to Kurdistan, I initiated proceedings in the Norwegian parliaments where the genocide in Halabja and the entire Untold campaign was thoroughly debated. Let me firstly thank those, particularly my friends, Mr. Aram Ahmad Muhammad and Mr. Falah Mustafa Bakir, for the information and insight they provided about the genocide while we visited Kurdistan. Now, how did we achieve what we achieved in Norway? Ladies and gentlemen, all countries have their own political system, judicial system, and political traditions. It is our duty to use these systems or traditions to have what happened in Iraq deemed as genocide. The challenge in my country was that Norway does not have any tradition in its political system for recognizing genocide as genocide, but in the court of law. Neither our parliament nor our government has ever passed any resolution or produced any document which identifies or defines genocide as genocide. If I went to Prime Minister or to the Parliament and expressed a wish that the government or the Parliament must recognize genocide in Kurdistan as a genocide, I would get following answer. We do not have any mechanism for doing so. So even if we would like to do so, we won't be able to. Because of this, we had to be shrewd and look for a creative solution. We found one. I talked to the Foreign Minister. I proposed initiating a debate where I would summon the Minister to Parliament and ask him whether the Norwegian government recognized what happened in Halabja and during Untold campaign as genocide or not. I suggested then that he should make use of a ploy we had previously used, namely to use the verdict made by the Iraqi court where it had concluded that the Untold campaign against the Kurdish people in the city of Halabja constituted genocide. He should then endorse this verdict. By doing so, the government of Norway would recognize the genocide as genocide. I am immensely pleased that the minister agreed upon this, this method, which we had previously used in Parliament in the case of Srebrenica genocide. So friends, Norway has done its part of work. It must now be used for all its worth to impel other parliaments and governments in Europe to recognize the genocide as genocide. I've been told that a similar debate has been initiated in Swedish Parliament, and I would like to talk to my Swedish colleagues in order to get more information about what actually happened and what sort of, how can we use that debate in our further work. Yet there's the fundamental question to be answered, and it has been answered during the day, but we must remember this question must always be put forward and answered, and that is, why should Europe recognize what happened in Kurdistan in 1980s as genocide? Why should European politicians, parliamentarians, and ministers should spend their valuable time on this issue? Why is it so important? It is imperative to have a good answer to this question. And the answer actually is simple. It has been given through the day here, because genocide has taken place in at least 3 times since Untold. It happened in 1994 in Rwanda. It happened in 1995 in Srebrenica, in Europe's own backyard, under the very supervision of United Nations Armed Forces. And it happened in Sri Lanka in 2009. So it can happen anytime, anywhere. This must never happen again. That's why European politicians must spend time on this issue. Therefore, Europe must learn from the genocide in Kurdistan. We must acquire knowledge about what happened, how it happened, why it happened, the consequences of the genocide, and how we can prevent similar tragedies from happening in future. It must be made an issue for European politicians. They have a responsibility on behalf of humanity. How should we proceed then? Since I don't have much time left today, allow me to give you a very brief outline, and I'm available for further discussions and work with all of you. I believe that we must raise the level of knowledge about what happened during Untold amongst the politicians and particularly parliamentarians in Europe. It's very low level of knowledge among the politicians and particularly parliamentarians in Europe. B, we must urge parliamentarians to initiate debates in their respective parliaments like we did in Norway. Thirdly, we must make European countries contact the Kurdish and Iraqi government in order to learn what happened during Untold. Fourthly, we must educate European public about what happened during Untold. Fifthly, we must make European historians and experts research on atrocities. We know that there are many Iraqi and other Middle Eastern experts and historians who have been working on that, but we need to get European experts and historians to research on the issue. And finally, we must raise awareness about Untold among the common man and woman in Europe. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a work which may take time. Europe has its own domestic problems for the time being. Many countries are suffering from financial crisis, unemployment, and social unrest. Politicians in many countries are spending almost all their time on finding solutions to these issues. People are fighting their day-to-day fight in some countries at least, and generally in the entire Europe. To draw their attention to what happened in Kurdistan 25 years ago is therefore a demanding job. But there is a job which must be done because the victims and the survivors deserve it, and because Europe must learn about this genocide so that we can prevent such atrocities in Europe and anywhere else in the world. We have all necessary resources on our hand. Words Conscious is there. The KRG is there. Kurd people are genuinely engaged and they are a political force in Europe. What we need are people with insight, political experience, and context within the political establishment in Europe to lead this process. Power must be identified, united, and channelized. We owe this to the victims, survivors, and to the peaceful future. I thank you very much for the invitation and attention. Thank you very much.